We shall begin. We're going to talk about a concept we've spoken about a couple of times, that hopefully we'll be able to gain additional illumination from today. The Parsha name of the week is Emor. Emor. Emor means to talk. Talk. So we have to ask a simple question. Talk about what? What are we talking about? Talk. Talk about what? Now, truth be told, the question is a little bit taken out of context because the verse says, Emor el kohanim, talk to the kohanim. There was an instruction given to Moses that he had to give a special talk to the priests because they had special laws. The laws of who they were permitted to marry, who they were permitted to become impure to in case of death, etc. So the priests have their own set of rules that didn't apply to everyone else. So God had to tell them, Emor el kohanim, speak to the kohanim. And as we learn, that the older priests had to be responsible to teach the younger priests. So this is really what the verse is saying. However, when we say, what is the name of the parsha? We say the name of the parsha is Emor. Emor means to talk. We don't say Emor el kohanim, speak to the priests. The name of the portion is speak to the priests. No. The name that we call it, the custom by the Jewish people, when you give a name to the portion, we call it Emor, to talk. So this must be, as always, that there has to be some lesson in here for the Jewish people, an eternal message for the Jewish people. So we're going to try to figure out what exactly is this lesson. What are we to talk about? If we ask the question honestly, to a Jew, to a religious Jew, certainly, you don't need to be religious to answer this question. You would most probably answer and say, well, if there's something that we need to speak about, it most probably is words of Torah. If you got to talk about something, this must be an instruction to study Torah, to discuss words of Torah, etc. That would be a fair answer. However, it cannot be so. It cannot be that this is instruction that refers to the words of Torah. Why not? For the simple reason that we have other instructions to study Torah and to speak to Torah. Namely, in the Shema, we say, Vishinantam livonecha v'dibarta ba. You should teach it to your children, and you should speak these words to them. These words means the words of Torah. So the mitzvah to speak the words of Torah, if you will, would be learned from v'dibarta ba, different verse in the Torah. In other words, we have a verse in the Torah that tells us that we're familiar with, that we should speak the words of Torah. So what possibly could this word Emor, to speak, what could it possibly be talking about? Compound that with what we learned in Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 1, Mishnah 17. It says like this, Shimon b'noi Omer, Shimon, his son, the son of Rabbi Gamliel, said, this was a leader of the Jewish people before the destruction of the Second Temple. He said, Kol yomai godalti ben hachacham, my whole life I was raised between the scholars. He was raised, his father was the Jewish leader, and he was raised among all of the Jewish greats. And I have not found something better for the body than silence. Keep quiet. Best advice that he can give us, just keep quiet. It's not how much you talk. It's not elaborating in speech, even in study, verbal study, but that counts most. Rather, it's the deed. How much have you done? What are you doing? Not how much are you talking? And not only that, people that talk a lot bring about sin to themselves. The more you talk, it's inevitable that you're going to sin. So what do you learn from this? This was his sage advice to the Jewish people. This is what he would say to the Jewish people. Keep quiet. Talk a little, do a lot. You're going to talk a lot, it's only going to bring problems. This week's parsha is called Emor, talk. We want you to talk. In the Mishnah, it says, don't talk. The recipe for successful life is not to talk. So how do we figure this out? How do we untangle this pretzel? So this is something that we need to try and work on. And we're going to try to approach this idea a little bit from Ethics of Our Fathers. We'll see in a moment. But we're going to introduce to you a section from the Rambam, Maimonides. And this is Maimonides, the laws of Deus, the laws of good character traits. Okay? He says like this in chapter 5. Over here in chapter 5, he's talking about specific character traits for a chacham. A chacham is a wise person. You want to be a scholar, you want to be wise, a sage. These are certain traits that you should live by. It's a whole chapter dedicated. So he says in paragraph 7 that a Talmud Chacham, someone who is a scholar, doesn't scream, he doesn't shout, etc. He doesn't raise his voice more than he has to, but he speaks calmly, always calmly with other people. And even when he speaks calmly with other people, he makes sure he's careful that his words should never come across as being arrogant. So it's not only the tone that he uses, but also the words that he says. He always initiates saying hello to everybody in order that people should find him pleasant. So far, it makes sense, right? Nice traits you would want to see from anybody, especially someone who is in a scholarly position, a leader. Then he goes on to say, Vidones kala odom of kafschus. He judges everyone favorably. He speaks of the praise of his friend and not of their denigration. Doesn't speak ill, doesn't speak not nice at all. He loves peace and he pursues peace. If he sees that what his words are going to be listened to and accepted, he says it. And if not, if he sees he's just saying words no one's going to listen to him anyway, so he keeps quiet. And he goes on to continue giving examples, but this is the idea. So we're going to focus over here on the one line that he says, that a sage, a Talmud Chacham, a scholar, always judges everyone favorably. He always speaks of the praise of his friend and never of their flaws. Never speaks not nice about anybody, about his friends. Okay, that's what he says again, chapter 5. Now let's jump forward to chapter 6. In chapter 6, he's talking about not a Talmud Chacham, not a scholar, but he's speaking about everybody now. Now we're getting to everybody. No, you can't run away from this. This is for you. And he says as follows. Mitzvah, there is a mitzvah. There is a commandment. There's an instruction given on every person. Everyone has this instruction to love every single Jew like you love yourself. As the verse says, you shall love your fellow as yourself. Therefore, what must you do? You have to speak of his praises. And you have to care for his money, just as you care for your own money and your own honor. And anyone who gains honor by denigrating or embarrassing his friend has no share in the world to come. So we're going to focus now on the line that he says, that there's a mitzvah on every single person to love your fellow as yourself. And therefore, what's the first way this is expressed? We have to speak of their praise. We have to speak words of praise about them. Before he said the Talmud Chacham, he has a mitzvah. The way the sage behaves is he always speaks about his praise of his friend and not of their bad side. Never speaks ill of his friends. Chapter 6, every person has to love your fellow, and this is expressed by speaking about the praise of your. What's the difference? What's the difference? Why do you have to separate these things? Why, in what way is the scholar, is the Talmud Chacham different in terms of their behavior than everybody else? He gives the same instruction for both. The wise sage always speaks of he judges everyone favorably. He always speaks of their praise and not of their negative side. A regular person has to love his fellow Jew, and therefore he has to speak of his praise. Well, it sounds to me like it's the same thing. So why does he separate and divide into two different halachas? Slightly different words, but basically the same idea, very clearly spelled out. So some want to suggest, it's almost like it's a little bit Talmudic over here. Put on a little Talmudic hat for a moment. But we can differentiate in every action and everything that's done. There's the one who's doing it and one and the receiving end, right? There's the giver and then there's the receiver. So when one speaks about someone else, there is the person speaking, and then there is the one who is being spoken about. So some want to differentiate these two laws, that in chapter 5, where Maimonides is speaking about the sage, the scholar, he's giving over characteristic traits that are special for a scholar. In other words, what differentiates you from everybody else? How are you better than everybody else? So we're talking about things that are just relevant to the person speaking. And the way you speak, the way you behave, this is the way you differentiate yourself from everybody else. We're not result focused over here. It's just about you, not about anyone that's on the receiving end of it. Whereas in chapter 6, speaking about somebody else, the Maimonides would be focused on the recipient. You have to love your friend. So what's important? It's irrelevant about how I behave. The only relevance my behavior is how it affects you. It's not about me. This is about you. So therefore, I have to speak nice words about you, because they have to land properly by you. People say it can't be. No, but it's irrelevant about me. In other words, we're not focused on the person that's talking. We're focused on the person that's receiving over here. It's not about me being a nice guy or not a nice guy. That's irrelevant. The instruction is make sure your friend doesn't get hurt. Make sure that you show love to your friend. In other words, your friend has to feel loved. How are you going to make your friend feel loved? You got to tell them words of love. If you show them your true colors, then maybe it's not going to land right. You can't do that, right? So we don't care really about what you are at this point. It's not about you. And if we can put you under a microscope and see, oh, how nice of an individual you are, whether you should be put on a pedestal as a nice guy or not. No, this is irrelevant. It's all about the recipient and what the recipient feels. When it comes to the scholar, it's about what differentiates you from everybody else. No, we're going to put you under a microscope. We want to see what you're all about. We want to see what you're all about. We'll open you up. We'll see, oh, this person always speaks nicely. This person always judges everyone favorably. This person always speaks about the praise and not about anything else. The problem with this is that the last words of the sentence says about the scholar is, and he doesn't speak negative, doesn't speak the ill of anybody. That seems to be speaking about how someone is going to take it. That's not about me anymore. That's about the person that's receiving it. So this is a little bit problematic, and for other reasons too, to try to make this nuanced differentiation between the two. So we have to come up with another way how we can possibly understand what Maimonides is talking about over here. Okay, so the way we're going to do that is by going back to Ethics of Our Fathers. In Ethics of Our Fathers, in chapter 2, what we studied on Shabbos, in Mishnah number 4 from Hillel, Hillel said, sorry, not Hillel, it's Gamliel as well, son of Rabbi Yehuda, he said as follows. One of the things that he taught was, no, Hillel, I'm sorry, so Hillel said, don't separate yourself from the community. Don't believe in yourself until the day you're going to die. Don't judge your friend until you reach his place. Don't say something which isn't easy to be understood in the hopes and in the anticipation that in the future they will understand it. Don't talk like that. Don't say when I have time, I'll study. Maybe you won't have time. So study now, in other words. So we're going to focus on this line. It says, don't judge your friend until you've reached this place. What does this line mean? Don't judge your friend until you reach this place. Number one. The second teaching that we mentioned before, which comes from Ethics of Our Fathers, chapter 1, from Yeshua ben Prachi, he said, always judge everyone favorably. Parenthetically, by the way, you should just know, the author of this teaching, judge everyone favorably, is Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachi is known in the Gemara as a famous story. There was a Jew, put that inside. There was a Jew who lived about 2024 years ago. He was born 2024 years ago, I think. About then, very famous Jew. And
we won't say his name.
We won't say his name. It was a Jewish guy, a Jewish kid born. And some say that this Jewish kid was the gentleman about the story I'm about to tell you right now. Although historically, from a Jewish perspective, the years don't work out, because the story I'm going to tell you now happened about 150 years before that. But nevertheless, some want to attribute the story that I'm going to share with you now to this Jew that was born 2024 years ago. So either it was him and it happened, and people just have when he was born wrong. He was born 200 years before what people think, or it wasn't him, but someone who they think is him. What Yeshu, we call him Yeshu. Yeshu was a student of Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachi. Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachi was on the run because they wanted to kill all the scholars, so he was on the run. He ran from Israel to Egypt, I believe. On his way back from Egypt, they stopped off in a hotel. They sent him a message that it's safe to come back now to Israel. He stopped off in his journey, stopped off at a place to sleep. He had his students with him. And one of his students commented on the owner of the hotel, that one of the women that worked in the hotel, he commented that on her appearance was ugly. He said that she was extremely ugly. Her eyes were ugly. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachi, the teacher, heard his student talk like this, and he said, "Get out of here. If you can talk like that, if my student, you don't belong in my circle. If this is where your brain is, when you look at another human, this is what you see, this is what you comment, get lost." He threw him out. He threw him out of yeshiva, he threw him out of the class, he threw him out of his group. He was out on his own. And this individual came back and tried to ask for forgiveness. And every time he came back and asked for forgiveness, Yeshua ben Prachi told him, "No. Sorry, we're not accepting you. You crossed a red line and there's no return for you." This went on for a while. Eventually, Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachi said, "You know what? Next time he comes, I can tell he really means it. He really does mean it. And because he really means it, you have to accept him, forgive him. So next time he comes, we'll let him come back in." It just so happened to be that the next time he came, Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachi was in the middle of reciting the Shema, and the student came to say, "Rebbe, I'm sorry, I didn't mean it. I was inappropriate." And Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachi motioned with him with his hand, like what he thought to mean, "You have to wait a minute, not now, wait till I finish." But the student was so used to being told no that he thought that the hand gesture meant to get lost. So he said, "If that's the case, there's no return, there's no hope for me." So he went and he turned from being a Jewish person and he started sinning. He became a sinner. He left the religion and became a sinner. And some will say that he went and he started his own religion. That's what some will say, although that's not what it says in the Gemara, but one thing may have led to the other. And Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachi, the teacher, was devastated. He was devastated by what happened because he really this was the moment he was going to take him back. And that's why he would always tell everybody, you have to judge everyone favorably. A lesson he learned by himself. And we tell everybody, someone comes and says to them, "They're sorry," you have to judge them favorably. You can't think that you know better. Don't assume otherwise. Assume that they have good intentions. This is Rabbi Yeshua ben Prachi. So this was his teaching that he would do. That's parenthetically a story. And Rabbi Shua ben Prachya tells us you have to judge everyone favorably. Hillel tells us, chapter 2, don't judge your friend until you've reached his place. Seems to be similar idea. Very the same idea, just from a different angle, right? Now, this is in Ethics of Our Fathers. Ethics of Our Fathers is unique Mishnah because it's not the regular Mishnayos. We don't learn law from these Mishnayos. This is what's called Mili de Chasidusa. This is advice for a chassid. In other words, a chassid is someone who goes beyond the letter of the law. Mm-hmm. If you want to go beyond what you have to do, you follow the words of Ethics of Our Fathers. This is ethics. It's a way of life, to live a moral and ethical life full of rich values. You want to get away with the letter of the law? You can get away without this. Fine. But who are we talking to over here? When we say in the Mishnah, judge everyone favorably, you tell me the circumstance that a rabbi would need to tell you to judge him favorably.
Often.
Yeah, and give me an example of a case. In other words, what I'm saying is, if you have to tell me to judge them favorably, that means that there's room not to judge them favorably. And that's why I have to be instructed to judge them favorably. If there would be no room for error, I wouldn't need an instruction to judge them favorably. So obviously, we're talking about someone who isn't so beautiful, someone who isn't perfect, someone who has problems, may have done something wrong. You watch someone doing something incorrect, and you say to yourself, how can they do that? I'm going to scream at them. I'm going to judge them favorably. Don't judge them until you've reached their place. Relax, calm down. Don't be so quick to judge, right? But absent that teaching, absent that value, oh yeah, I'm going to be quick to judge. Oh yeah, I'm going to scream at them because I'm going to follow what I see. I'm going to follow what I hear. I'm going to follow what I believe to be true. You come along and tell me, don't. Stop. So we're talking about a person, we're talking about a case where my friend did something that was improper. There was something improper over here. If there would be nothing improper, I don't need the teaching. And still in all, with the improper behavior, I'm instructed to go beyond the letter of the law and judge the person favorably. And based on this now, we can understand Maimonides. Maimonides speaks about the scholar. The scholar, the one who goes beyond the letter of, right? We hold you to a higher standard. That's what we tell someone who's in such a position. We hold you to a higher standard. So what's the higher standard that we hold them to? The standard is they speak of their friend's praise even though there is improper behavior taking place. Although I'm noticing improper behavior, nevertheless, they only speak of their friend's praise and not of their improper behavior at all. It's not two separate clauses. It's one sentence. They only speak of their friend's praise even when there's room to say otherwise. They don't say it at all. They're constantly speaking of their friend's praise. Okay. So now we understand a little bit more what Maimonides is talking about. Talking about someone who, let's say, is doing something wrong. Someone's saying something nasty. Someone's doing something improper. And we say the scholar, the sage, the rabbi, you have to, or they automatically, if you want to know, to hold them to this litmus test, when they witness that, they'll still only speak about their praise. Okay, and what does a regular person do? How does a regular person behave? So let's go back. Maimonides said one of the things of the scholar is that they always speak calmly, nicely. They always engage and say hello. Why? Because their role is people should always find them pleasant. If people don't find you pleasant, there's a problem with you as a person. You cannot be a real scholar. Real sages, real holy people, the real deal everyone wants to be next to you. Everyone likes to be in your presence. Everyone finds you such a sweet person, a nice person, etc., etc., etc. So that's integral to the integrity of the Talmud Chacham, of the scholar. So now, when I witness someone else doing something wrong, someone is doing something bad, evil, how do I react? Here is where there's a differentiation between the scholar and the ordinary person. The scholar has to figure out a way how to stop you from doing that improper behavior. The regular person also has to stop you from doing that improper behavior. Everyone is responsible if you see someone doing something wrong to let them know you shouldn't be doing this, to try to stop them. The regular person doesn't have on their consciousness at all times, hey, that person has to find me nice and pleasant. So therefore, it's not I don't care if you don't find me nice and pleasant. I don't care if you think that I'm a nasty person. My job is to make sure that you stop doing what you're doing that's wrong. So I come at you from that perspective. And obviously, how am I going to react? I'm going to react just harshly. I'm going to come across as harsh on you. I'm going to come across as tough on you, trying to prevent you from doing this. The scholar, if he comes across as tough and harsh on the person, well, the reaction to that usually is going to be a defensive position, and it's going to be stay away, trying to push back. But even if you're successful, it's still not pleasant to be on the receiving end of such harsh talk. So even if I was successful in preventing the improper behavior, nevertheless, it's not going to be successful because I just lost a fan, so to speak. Somebody out there now thinks that I'm a nasty person. I lose myself. I lost control. I speak harsh. That's not good. So what does the scholar have to do? The scholar has to do is like as follows, a fascinating idea. The scholar has to identify and extract from the other individual his good or her good. And automatically, by highlighting the good, the improper behavior will stop. Overwhelm them with good, overwhelm them with their own good sides, and automatically they'll fall back on that type of disposition and they'll stop from falling back on the negative side of themselves. How do they do that? They do that by speaking complimentary to the individual. So how does this work? How does this work? In order to understand how this works, we have to go to the reverse, or the 180 degree, the other end, the inverted way. And now we're talking about Lashon Hara. Speaking not nice. Till now we're talking about talking nice. Let's get nasty. Let's talk gossip. All right. Gary, did you hear what happened to Chaim Yankel? Let me tell you what happened to Chaim Yankel. When I start speaking to you about Chaim Yankel, about whoever it is, so we're taught in the Gemara that Lashon Hara, nasty talk, bad talk, evil speech, gossip kills 3 people. Every time it's spoken, there are 3 people that are being killed. Who's being killed? The one talking, the one listening, and the one it's about. Okay, perfect. The one talking, how is it harming them? How does it harm me if I speak Lashon Hara? Okay, so I'm speaking not nice. I'm speaking evil. I'm doing a sin. I'm causing self-harm. The one listening, how is it hurting them?
Well, they're kind of probably enjoying something bad. Gossip. Like you get gossip, tell me more. Oh, really?
How is that hurting me? It's enjoyable. How is it hurting me?
But it's a sinful thing that you're
Okay.
taking pleasure in someone else.
My sin, you speak Lashon Hara. It's not my sin.
Yeah, but you're telling me. And
It doesn't. There's no sin. It doesn't say that you can't listen. It says you can't talk. But you can't listen. But listening is not the sin.
Should say walk away. Don't leave me alone.
Fine, it's killing you. It's killing you. In other words, you have to understand that when you're listening to Lashon Hara, you're becoming corrupted. When you're being filled with negative, you yourself are becoming a receptacle for negativity, for nasty. That's harming you. You're filling your brain, you're filling your whole body with inappropriate words that you should not have heard. So it's harming. So the one speaking and the one listening, we understand, but how is the one that's being spoken about being harmed? They don't even know that they're being spoken about. In most cases of gossip, the subject of the gossip is not in the room. Usually if the subject is in the room, we don't talk about them. We only talk about people when they're not here. So they don't even know that we're speaking about them. So how does it hurt them? They don't even know what's happening. They are completely oblivious to the fact that they're being spoken about. Right now, it's very possible that all four of us are being spoken about. Lashon Hara. Well, we have to judge everyone favorably. So we won't do that. We just learned. It can't be us. But with absent what we learned up until now, there are those people that didn't yet study ethics of our fathers. They don't know yet. Do we feel harmed? Do we feel like we're being filled with nasty? Do we feel like we're being filled with inappropriate? Do we feel we're regular? We don't feel any different. Somebody else, what they do 1,000 miles away or 100 feet away, it doesn't make a difference to me.
Hurting someone's reputation.
So let's say there's no reputation being harmed. Let's say there's not a reputation being harmed. I mean, like in every way, yeah, a little bit, but you're putting him on the same level of harm as being done by the one speaking and listening. It seems to be a little bit strange. And the answer is like this. What is the purpose of speech? Why did God give us speech? And for that matter, we'll understand from this what it means when it says that God created the world with speech. What does it mean God spoke and the world came into existence? Speech is the mechanism given to man to reveal that which is hidden inside them. The only way for someone to know what's going on inside you is by telling it to them. If you can't tell it to them, they don't get it. They won't understand. They'll never know. So speech at its rawest form, at its rawest definition, is revealing that which is hidden. Now, when I speak negative about someone else, before I spoke about them, before I said a word about them, where was that negativity? It existed somewhere hidden within them. But if it was so obvious to everyone, I wouldn't need to say it, right? If it was revealed to everyone, I wouldn't need to tell it to you. But you didn't know about this. That means from you it was hidden, right? Now, what did I just do? I went and I revealed it to you, to the listener. Now, everybody here knows that negative, that unfortunate, that flaw that the subject that we're talking about has. So we just went and we uncovered for the whole world to see, for all the listeners, to now see that individual's flaw. Now, every time you look at that person, every time you hear about that person, you can't help yourself. But go back to that, I know this about you. So my whole perception of you and your whole perception to the rest of the world has just been discovered and uncovered. The world now has more revealed bad that they see in you. It's deathly. It's a killer. If this is the way it works for inappropriate speech, how much more so does this work when it comes to positive speech? When I speak nicely about someone else, when I compliment, even if you're not in the room, it doesn't matter. The nicer I speak about someone else, I am revealing more and more and more nice about them to you. I am uncovering before your eyes, I am revealing to you so much greatness, so much positivity that exists within this individual. If it works like that when the bad, by the Lashon Hara, Allah has kama v'kama, as we say. How much more so? Meruba mida toiva, meruba mida puranius. God's attribute of good far, far, far outweighs the attribute of punishment. So if when it comes to punishment, we consider all three to be victims of this crime. When it comes to the good, we have to consider everyone to be beneficiaries of this mitzvah. So now comes along the person, and the person sees someone that's doing something inappropriate. I see someone that can be judged harshly. And what do? What does the scholar do? The scholar begins to always speak about this individual's beauty, compliments them, praises them for their good, for their kindness, whatever qualities that the good qualities that people have. And that's slowly what the person begins to think of themselves. Because I myself was unaware. I wasn't in tune with that part of me. The proof is I was doing something I shouldn't have been doing. Did something inappropriate. If I would have been more in sync with the brightness that I have, with the good and kind that exists within me, I wouldn't waste my time with things that would be inappropriate. So that's the trick, says Maimonides. That's the unbelievable trick that the scholar has. If you want to know, that's the definition of a real Talmud Chacham. Most people are not holding that level. Regular people, you gotta rebuke. You gotta come out harsh. Talmud Chacham doesn't do that. Never comes across as harsh. Even when they say something harsh, it's with love. You feel the love. You feel every word is laced with love. You feel it's only bringing out something good from the individual, from the person. Let's get to the other teaching for a moment. Don't judge your friend until you've reached their place. What does this saying even mean? Don't judge your friend until you've reached their place. And if I reach their place, then what? Now I could judge them?
Who you know what they're going through.
All right. If I know what you're going through, now I could judge you?
Well, could understand them.
So then I'm permission to judge you?
No.
Okay, so what are you telling me? In other words, finish the thought over here. Don't judge your friend until you reach their place. So generally, commonly it's understood as it's impossible for you to really ever be in someone else's shoes because you didn't live their life. So even if you do understand, if you have all the information in front of you, you can never interpret, you can never actually live the same way and experience it the same way that the other person experienced their life. So that's the most common way to understand it, which is all true. But the Alter Rebbe takes a different approach in Tanya. The Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya something fascinating. He says, you know why you shouldn't judge a person until you've reached their place? Because their place is what's causing them to sin. What does that mean? He says, this individual, you want to know why they're doing what they're doing? You got to look at their place in life. What do they do for a living? You know what this person does for a living? They have to go on they have to, who are the people that are judging? Why would I be judging you? Obviously, if I'm judging you, it means I think of myself as a little bit better than you. I would never do what you're doing. I would never do that behavior, right? You wouldn't do that behavior, says the Alter Rebbe. Don't be so sure. Just take the same trade ride with them every morning. Go with them, follow on the same street in the city that they're going on. Meet the same people that they're meeting. Be faced with the same distractions that they're faced with. And then you'll see what's causing that person to sin. Mikoima, his place, his life, what he sees every day, what he listens to, what he has to listen to every day because that's his job. He has no choice. This is what he does for a living. It's not an excuse for the person. We don't say, oh, you're exempt because that's your job. No. But from my perspective, from an outsider's perspective, don't judge them because their place in life is causing them to sin. The school that they went to, the friends that they had, the home that they were raised in, etc. All these things brought about what you see now in front of you. That's my perspective, how I should look at you. Their place in life, what they have to do, their lot, as we say. Everyone was given a certain lot. God gave everyone a certain place in this world. This person's place is what's causing them to sin. If I would have that place, I would also be a sinner. Now we can understand when you see another Jew who God placed them in a position with tremendous challenges in front of them, real life challenges. Everyone faces their own challenges. Everyone, no one's life is perfect. Everyone has to go through different challenges. And we observe and we're watching how this person has, we'll call them, they're being tested all the time. People that are being tested all the time. This teaches us something fascinating. God only gives us what we can handle. Which means if you, an individual, are being tested all the time, and I look at you, what does that tell me about you?
Strong.
It means that you have something that nobody else has to be able to overcome those tests and challenges. I don't have them. And the proof I don't have that is, if I would be tested like you, I would fail. It wouldn't be a test for me. God never gave me that test because he knows that I would fail from that test. God only gives me what I can handle. Doesn't mean it's easy. It just means that you're capable of overcoming it. You're capable of saying no. Now let's stop for a moment. Wow, look at that person. Look what they have to, look what they're challenged. You see, a person did a grave sin. Oh, I can't believe. How could you be so stupid? How can you be so dumb? How would you ever do such a sin? I mean, I don't want to say you fill in the blank, whatever it is. Well, let's think for a moment. You know why the person did it? Because they wanted to. They took pleasure out of it. They thought that they couldn't say no. They were tested. God put a test in front of them. And the test was so powerful, was magnetic, that the person thought that they couldn't say no. That when I look at that, what do I see? You know what I see? I say, wow, you actually could have said no. And that's pretty wild. That is pretty wild. You actually had the strength to say no to that? Wow. Pretty unbelievable. So when I see someone doing something inappropriate, what emerges from this whole thing is, I as an outsider should take away what? My takeaway is how awesome of a person you are. How rich and powerful, how much energy God invested in you. That God gave you this struggle. You're going through this struggle right now. You failed maybe. Failing isn't an indicator either way. It's just, for me, the outsider sees it's real. It's a real struggle. The proof is you fell, you succumb. Well, that tells me that this individual's got some real special powers. Only they can overcome such a challenge and a struggle. So the Alter Rebbe is teaching of that their place, their challenge, their struggle, what they're living through right now is actually the cause, what's causing them to sin. Again, not an excuse for you, because you have to always use self-control. Fits right in now. It's coupled with the teaching of judge him favorably. Because when I see what you're going through, automatically, from this perspective, now I'm only going to judge you favorably because I see an awesome soul in front of me. You have real powerful soul powers. This is the real McCoy. This is the real deal. The tzaddik, the righteous person, the one who's never tasted sin, no, it's possible that they don't know what it means to overcome a struggle. They've never tasted that. Who said if there was dangled in front of their eyes, they would say no? Maybe they would say yes and quicker than someone else. Maybe they would say yes and more frequent than someone else. So this is the real beauty of what the Rambam is teaching us. So Maimonides teaches us to judge a person favorably. Do you want to know the role of the scholar? The role of the Talmid Chacham is they always judge everyone favorably by always speaking nicely of them and nothing ill of them at all. They don't see anything. They never see a problem. They never see a flaw. Even when you would think there's a flaw, what do they see? When I see someone else doing something wrong, which but a normal person would look at as a flaw. Wow, this person failed. The scholar sees unbelievable soul power. That's a bigger compliment for you. You're only showing me more how great you are and how powerful you are, that you're even able to overcome such a type of a challenge. There's only good involved. And the lens they wear is only good. They only see good. They see good from every single angle. And this is what the Mishnah says. You should always judge people favorably. Constantly judge people favorably. Constantly recognize that everyone in life has special powers that they were given from above. If you see someone that they're sinning, double down on those powers, because that means that there's extra strength over there. Now, we can understand what the name of the parsha is. Emor, to speak. What are we talking about? Speak about what? Oh, not words of Torah. That's a separate idea. Speak words of Torah separate. You know what we're talking about? Emor, speak nice about other people. Even people that you can have what to say that's not nice about them. Not in terms of lashon hara. You're going to go around gossip telling somebody else. No. Always speak compliments about other people. Always say how nice people are. That's going to have the most powerful effect on the individual that you're talking about. You want to change someone? This is, what did I tell you in the beginning? In the verse, if you look at the verse, it says, speak to the Kohanim. Right? When it came to the Kohanim, who was responsible to teach who? The elders were responsible to teach the youngsters all the laws of the priesthood. In other words, that's education. The elders are responsible to teach the youth. If you want to know the most powerful way to teach youth, from a teacher, for a rabbi, for a parent, for a friend, if you want to have an impact on someone else's life, there are two ways to have an impact on them. You could come across as harsh, tell them the truth the way it is, and it's fine. Or there's another way, a softer way. And that is the way we're talking about now. Emor, to speak nicely. I don't mean only in the volume that you use. I'm not only talking about in the tone of your voice, but speak nice words about the other person. How nice they are, how charitable they are. Someone is a miser, doesn't give any money. You call them a miser. You'll get you 5 cents from them. Maybe. But if you start telling them that you're such a generous person, and I know you to be so, everyone knows the more you say they're generous, what's going to happen? It's not the pshat that they're going to now convince themselves that they're generous. No. God only gives a person money in order to share it with other people, which means that they have now a temptation dangling before their eyes. It's called money. Hold it or give it. And they have a lot of money. So the temptation is even stronger. Hold on to more and more, or give. That's a very powerful temptation. Why should I give it to you if I could have more for myself? Every time they say that they're not giving it, that means that I can respond in one of two ways. I can either say, you're so stingy, you're so miserly, and it's true. You should really change your ways, and hopefully I'll break you. I'll break that attitude out of you. Or start speaking complimentary, how nice and sharing and giving and volunteering of an individual they are. And then they'll actually get in touch with that side of themselves. Because God did give them a giving side. The proof is that he gave them money. There's no one that has money that God didn't give them the capacity to give it away. And the same is with any talent that we have, any person has. Everyone has been blessed with the talent. Behavior. You want them to behave good? God gave everyone the capacity to behave good. You see someone who's not behaving good, a child in school is acting out, a child in the house, someone's acting out. You can tell them how bad they are. Don't ever do this. Terrible behavior. You're a misbehaving child. Or tell them how good of a child they are, how well behaved they are. The more they understand and get in touch with their side of good behavior, automatically the bad behavior will fall away. They'll stop misbehaving. How can I, who's such a well-behaved kid, ever do such a thing? This is the most powerful lesson when it comes to education, when it comes to having an impact. So yes, although it's true that Maimonides, one second, although it's true that Maimonides says this as a law for the scholar and the sage, and not for everybody, but the fact that the parsha is called Emor, and all the Jewish people call the parsha Emor to talk, to speak, this is an indication that there is part of this that we can all learn from, and we have to all incorporate into our own lives. And the lesson is a very obvious one, and one that's all of us should work on, and hopefully make ourselves a little bit better in this area, something that we could always be reminded of to improve on ourselves, literally, the most simple sense, as we learned from Shimon in chapter 1, don't talk a lot. Better to be quiet. Always better to be quiet, except when it comes to saying nice things about other people. Speak nice things about other people all the time. And not only is that a good thing for yourself, but even the person is not here right now. Even if the person's not in the room, they don't even hear. It doesn't matter. You know why? Because not everyone in the room has been revealed to them. It's been uncovered for them by me, the speaker, about this individual. And now it's been revealed into the world a little bit more. Now that side, that attribute has been open and expressed a little bit more in the world. And that's eventually how it's going to have its effect in this world. Anyone have any? Yes, Shalom, you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
I just want to say, they always say you do more with honey than you do with